Of northeast Scotland, Caithness, Sutherland, really quite a damp, miserable day here. But behind that, we will see some brighter spells developing elsewhere, still with some scattered and blustery showers around. Temperatures generally ranging between 14 and 21 degrees Celsius. Into the middle part of the week, another area of low pressure is beginning to show its face, and that will again bring a swathe of unsettled weather. Those ice bars really squeezing together, certainly bringing a lot of windy conditions, coastal gales in places as well. Quite a wet start to Tuesday for Northern Ireland, and then that rain is going to spread its way into most areas throughout the day. The far northeast and southeast probably holding on to some of the driest conditions. Further showers, though, possible as we head throughout Wednesday and Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories. The Met Police says it will speak to Channel 4 and the Sunday Times following claims of rape and sexual assault which were made against the comedian Russell Brand. A warning for those watching on television, the following footage contains flashing images. In a statement, the force said it was aware of media reports of a series of allegations, but had not received any police reports in relation to this. They urged anyone who believes they've been the victim of a sexual assault to contact police. It comes as the BBC, Channel 4 and a production company behind shows hosted by Brand in the mid-2000s launched their own urgent reviews. Russell Brand denies any criminality and insists all of his relationships have been consensual. Claims that Labour wants the UK to join the EU's migrant quota scheme are complete garbage, Sir Keir Starmer says. The Labour leader had indicated he'd be open to working with Brussels on managing channel crossings, which may involve taking in some asylum seekers. But Sir Keir says that would be as part of a deal to return channel migrants. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick says Labour's short-term fix would mean 100,000 more illegal migrants in Britain every year. Liz Truss will claim that Rishi Sunak's government has spent £35 billion more than she would have done. Speaking at the Institute for Government, the former Prime Minister will defend her time in charge nearly a year after the mini-budget that led to her resignation. According to The Telegraph, Ms Truss will claim that under her plans, £18.4 billion would have been saved this year and next. Wales has become the first country in the UK to introduce a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit for residential roads. The Welsh Government says cutting the limit from 30 will protect lives and save the Welsh NHS £92 million a year. The Welsh Tories, however, say the decision will slow down emergency services and negatively impact people's livelihoods. And the Met Office says more than a month's rain could fall by the end of today. An amber weather warning for thunderstorms is in place across parts of Devon and Somerset. Severe flash flooding has been reported in the towns of Dawlish and Kenton. Both of those are in Devon, and flights have been cancelled at Exeter Airport. Meanwhile, a yellow warning is in place across south-west England and South Wales. This is GB News across the United Kingdom on your television, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now it's time for the Camilla Tominey Show.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. Lovely to have your company this morning. Again, we've got a jam-packed 90 minutes for you. I'm going to be speaking to Sir Robert Buckland, the former Justice Secretary, because there's been a lot in the news about, well, I think prisons, shoplifting. Have we become a nation of shoplifters? And also, of course, the XL bully ban. I'll be discussing all that with him and a bit on Tory infighting as well, because, you know, no week goes by without Tories being at each other's throats about something or other. I'm also going to be speaking to Pat McFadden, described as the most powerful Labour MP most people have never heard of. And I'm going to be discussing all things London with Susan Hall. She's the Tory candidate for the Mayor of London. She wants to defeat Sadiq Khan. I'm going to discuss her chances with her a little later on. I'm also going to get a political update from across the Atlantic because I'm going to be speaking to Stephanie Grisham, who's a former White House press secretary to Donald Trump. And you won't want to miss this. In a follow-up to my exclusive interview with legendary broadcaster Alistair Stewart last weekend, I'll be speaking with his wife Sally Stewart about Alistair's shock dementia diagnosis. But now I'm joined by former Justice Secretary and MP for South Swindon, Sir Robert Buckland. Robert, lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for joining me. Let's just get started because with your legal hat on, you're a former lawyer, you were Justice Secretary. Can we talk about this Russell Brand situation? I mean, some people are saying, look, this is trial by media. He hasn't had an adequate right of reply. Questions are being asked of some of the broadcasters that employed him. This all happened on their watch, Channel 4, the BBC. What's your reaction to the story, Robert?
Well, I think all of us have to react with some shock about these revelations because they involve very, very serious matters involving very young women in many respects. And I can't imagine anything more serious in terms of the conduct, alleged conduct of a major figure who's well known in public Wildlife, for Star. Look, I mean, I don't know whether there are ongoing criminal proceedings. It doesn't sound.
We're waiting to hear. We're waiting to hear whether the police investigate. But should Channel 4 and the BBC investigate themselves?
Well, look, I think that actually it's probably the hallmark of a more open system and broadcaster to allow teams within their own organisation to do that. However, we know that the path here is a rather checkered one. We've seen this before with the BBC, where units go off and do things unilaterally, and then things disappear into a sort of miasma of indecision. I think the Savile case was an appalling example of that. And I very much hope here that we do get clarity and that victims of crime get justice. That surely has got to be in everybody's interests. I mean, the news is dominated by it today. I think it's really important that we now give complainants the space and the time to make their complaints or not, and then for due process to take place as this country is renowned for.
Let's also now move on to another big story in today's papers, and it's been big all week. This XL bully ban that Rishi Sunak has suggested. Now it's being said that actually, when you consider that some of these dogs are puppies, a lot of them being inbred, there seems to be kind of something in the bloodline that makes them more aggressive. One of the dogs associated with the dogs that have come to the UK is called Killer Kimbo. Should actually the dogs that are in the country now be culled to avoid any more humans being killed?
Well, look, I think we've got to look at this urgently, because what I'm worried about is if we get a precise definition here and then ban the dog, are we actually covering the various breeds and the various mutations that might exist out there in an adequate way? What I don't want to see is the law falling into disrepute and not keeping pace with the reality of the situation.
So do you advocate a cull then?
Well, look, I think we've got to put safety first. And frankly, we've seen some horrendous incidents and incidents as well involving owners. I think people are saying, oh, it's all about the owners. So some of the owners of these dogs themselves have been attacked or even killed. I don't think that's the right approach, and therefore, looking at the horrendous scenes that we're seeing some now, I think action has to be taken in order to deal with this problem.
For people listening at home, we're just looking at footage of the attack that took place in Birmingham. What about licences for owners, Sir Robert?
Well, we had licences until the late 80s. I mean, they were quite a low amount of money even then, and a lot of dog owners just didn't have them. I think licences in principle are a great idea. I think it would reinforce the point of responsible ownership, but they've got to be enforced. And therefore, we need a whole new apparatus to do that. Are we going to be able to fund that properly? Will the cost of licences be prohibitive? I know they've got them in the Republic of Ireland. I certainly think we should have another look. It's now nearly 40 years since we had them. Clearly, we can't just go back to the old system. But concept of responsible ownership of dogs is one that I think most of us in this country take hugely seriously. Millions of people have pets and do a job, but I think we should look at this as well.
So, Robert, I must ask you about the escape of Daniel Khalif. Lots has been said about the state of our prison system. You were Justice Secretary. Do you have to take some responsibility for what happened at Wandsworth and the state of our prisons?
Well, I worked very hard in my years as Justice Secretary to increase funding, and we did that. We increased both revenue funding and staffing in our prisons, and the prison building programme as well, which is ongoing, billions of pounds into new prisons being built. Look, this is a system under pressure. I don't pretend that it was easy in my time. In fact, we had to deal with COVID, which was a huge challenge, which we managed to negotiate, I think, pretty well, and staff worked very hard on that. I think the issue, this was an unusual and almost unprecedented daring escape. I think that what it's done is shone a light upon the scale of the task in our prisons and the hard job that officers do.
Isn't there a perception, though, Sir Robert, that nothing much changes? I mean, I remember going into prisons a decade ago and they had these issues. I spoke to your successor, Alex Chalk, last week, and I sort of asked him about the court backlog. And it's the same in Crown Court since COVID. It's 62,000 cases. So there's this sense that nothing has changed under the Conservatives, which is really damaging for you as a party hoping to win the next general election.
Well, look, I think that's not right. I think that in terms of the reforms that I made to make sure that people stay behind bars for longer, particularly serious violent and sexual offenders, that was an important reversal of Labour's policy of releasing people at halfway, no matter what their offence was. And I make no apology for that. What I do think is that across the board, and this applies to both parties, we need to invest more in the justice system. It's often forgotten, it's unfashionable, you hear less about it than you do schools and hospitals, and yet it is a hallmark of our society. So if I was still in office, of course, I'd be banging the drum very, very strongly to get more resources for courts and prisons. I managed to make some progress in my time, but we need to do more.
I mean, the police are blaming austerity cuts under the Conservatives for what seems to be a breakdown when it comes to dealing with low-level crime. We've got the Mail on Sunday now has launched a campaign to try and catch shoplifters. I mean, last time I checked, that should have been Copper's job. What's this whole situation that's happened with people not being criminalised for nicking stuff up to 200 quid? What's happened is, under the Conservatives, people seem to have been given carte blanche to thieve.
Well, I think that the current situation with shoplifting is unacceptable. I deal with the issue locally here in my constituency. I think that it's time for everybody, the big shop networks plus the police, to take this seriously. You know, we've got shop workers on the front line who are doing their level best to combat this crime and who do not feel supported. And that's why I think now it's up to each police force in the local area to really come together and bear down on this crime. We know that in most towns and cities, it's a hardcore of, I'm afraid, a group of habitual offenders, many of whom might have a drugs addiction. We know who these people are in the main, and organised shoplifting as well. Let's crack down on that, because in my belief is that, you know, it's like the broken window theory, isn't it? You know, we heard in New York years ago. If you deal with the crimes at that end of the spectrum, then you start to see you know, towns and cities improve and a whole attitude change.
So zero tolerance.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's shoplifting is theft. It is a crime with a penalty of up to 7 years of imprisonment. And I think that it's now time for the police and everybody concerned to work hard to bear down on this menace, frankly, which is affecting towns and cities.
Lovely to have your company this morning. Thank you so much for your time. That's Sir Robert Buckland, the former Justice Secretary.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you were able to enjoy the weekend, although the rather damp end for many of us is setting us up for what's to come during the new working week. Even into the end of Sunday, some heavy thunderstorms possible across parts of southeast England, torrential downpours, so do just take care if you are travelling there overnight. Elsewhere, the rain will be turning more persistent and heavy as well for western Scotland, parts of northwest England. Underneath all the cloud around for many of us, it will be rather warm, temperatures holding up around 12 to 17 degrees Celsius. So a very mild start to Monday morning, and this band of rain in the west will gradually push its way over towards the east, scooping up some of the thunderstorms as well, clearing them off out into the North Sea. Rain will be most persistent for parts of northeast Scotland, but behind that there will be some brighter intervals developing, still with a scattering of rather sharp showers to watch out for though. Temperatures ranging between 14 and 21 degrees Celsius. As we head into the middle part of the week, another area of low pressure is hot on its heels and wanting to move its way in. So blustery winds developing for a good chunk of Wales, England and Northern Ireland, coastal gales in places. And it will be bringing this band of rain initially across Northern Ireland at dawn on Tuesday, but increasingly spreading its way eastwards. Generally, northwest England, Wales seeing the brunt of the rainfall, far south and far north, perhaps seeing some drier intervals in places, but still catching some of that rainfall. Further showers as we head throughout Wednesday, Thursday and Friday as well. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm delighted to be joined by Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Shadow Minister of the Cabinet Office and Labour National Campaign Coordinator, Pat McFadden. Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you for joining me. Let's just start with the revelations about Russell Brand. Should your colleague Ed Miliband apologise for cozying up to this alleged rapist ahead of the 2015 election?
Well, these allegations have just emerged and they're really serious. In terms of what happens with them, I don't know if there'll be court action or charges brought. What I would say is they illustrate the need for the criminal justice system to take allegations of violence against women and girls really seriously. The prosecution rates right now are far too low. Victims don't have confidence to come forward, and we will make a big priority of this at the next election. We have proposals for specialist rape courts, for support for victims in police forces, and we want to send a strong signal to everyone in the criminal justice system that crimes like this need to be taken seriously and victims need to be supported and have the confidence to come forward.
OK. I mean, presumably you won't be inviting him to endorse your campaign come 2024. Let's move on to one of your key policy announcements, Mr McFadden. I think Keir Starmer has tried to clarify his approach to immigration. He's saying that Labour does not want to join the EU's own migration scheme. But it still begs the question, and this is what I think our viewers and listeners are trying to get an answer to. Under this idea of taking in some EU migrants in return for sending people back across across the channel. How many migrants are we talking about? He's avoiding the word quota, but we don't have any numbers at all. So can you give us a number?
No, and I don't think it will work like that. I mean, what my colleague, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has talked about is children with strong family links to the UK and so on. But I think you've also got to put this in the light of what happens now. No one gets returned. They're all staying in hotels and we're spending £2 billion a year on it. The system is completely failing. We have no returns agreement like that at all. So the counterfactual to sitting down and talking about some limited specific cases is we don't return anyone, we have a growing backlog and a massive cost to the taxpayer. That's the situation, the failing situation right now.
But if you have a returns agreement, you have to have numbers in mind. You surely must have a cap in your own mind, or even like a scale of how many migrants you think it's acceptable to accept into this country and how many should be returned across the channel.
No, you don't. You don't
Why?
have to sit down and talk about that kind of thing, because you're talking about this as though we were going to take part in an EU-wide quota system. I have to break it to you. There are some EU member states who don't even want to take part in that,
well, I
let
know.
alone the UK.
So why is, that's a really good point,
like
though, Mr. McFadden. Why is Sir Keir trying to have this scheme that kind of seems to ape what the EU is doing, and yet Poland is against it, Hungary's against it. Meanwhile, there are other EU countries, Denmark's one of them, that's now flirting with the idea of processing its own migrants in Rwanda, and yet you've opposed that scheme. So you want to cosy up to the ideas that the EU have that you agree with, but not those that you don't.
Look, even if this Rwanda scheme ever got off the ground, and I'm not sure it will not take anything like the 50,000 people that are currently staying in hotels at a cost of £2 billion a year for the taxpayer, let alone the numbers elsewhere in the system that aren't staying in hotels. So the current situation is failing. And the government, even if they got this Rwanda scheme off the ground, and who knows whether they will, it's all tied up in the courts, it's not going to take anything like those numbers. So you're still left with the problem of what to do with this backlog. And the other thing that we said that should happen in recent days is we have to process these claims much more quickly, hire the people to do it. It would be money well spent, because not doing that is adding to these costs. As I said, £2 billion a year in hotels as a result of not processing the claims or having any returns agreement to send a proportion of these people back at all.
I'm glad that you've mentioned this idea of migrants being hosted in hotels, because my colleague Patrick Christys carried out an investigation earlier in the week where he discovered that Labour-run Ealing Council has been housing people on the housing list in shipping containers. Is that right?
Well, I don't know about the specific story, but all of this shows the pressure that the accommodation system is under. You know, a few years ago, in fact, you know, probably less than that, there were little or no asylum seekers housed in hotels. Now it's 50,000. By the way, the number in hotels has gone up 20% since the Prime Minister said he would stop the boats. That's how successful his plan is right now.
I know, but it's just surprising that you'd have a Labour-run council, Ealing, housing people in barely habitable conditions, while at the same time complaining about migrants being in hotels. Actually, migrants seem to be being put up in better accommodation than people living here who have come here legally and end up living under Labour-run Ealing Council in squalid conditions.
Well, look, I think it's a bit dangerous when we start saying who's getting better conditions and who's not. The point of the system
you'd want legal immigrants to have better conditions than illegal ones, wouldn't you?
The point of the system should be to process these claims, to see who's legal and who's not, to see who's got a legitimate claim and who isn't. At the moment, that isn't happening, and that's what's led to this huge number of people staying in hotels at the cost of £2 billion a year. The Tories right now are presiding over a system which is failing to process people. It's costing the taxpayer a fortune, and it's not secure because it's being run by people smugglers. They are failing right now, and we need a more practical approach to deal with this.
I read in the week in The Guardian that Starmer is apparently talking to Sadiq Khan about you, Les. What's he saying?
Well, these things are devolved issues. It's a policy for the mayor. It's not a policy of the National Labour Party, and I'm sure the mayor's had a good dialogue with Keir Starmer about it.
Would you like to ape what Labour have done in Wales and introduce more 20-mile-an-hour zones?
No, I wouldn't.
Why is that? Is that the wrong decision for Mark Drakeford to have taken then?
Again, it's a devolved decision. We have this devolution where in parts of the country, whether it's a mayor, whether it's the government in Wales, where they've got power over something, they take the decisions. What I'm responsible for is Labour's national campaign for the next election. That proposal won't be in the manifesto next time. And around the country, different councils are taking different decisions. There have been Tory councils that have put in practice 20-mile-an-hour zones as well, but it will not be a thing in our manifesto as a national policy for the whole country.
OK, final question, Mr McFadden. Again, you've been described in The Guardian as pure New Labour. Is that the kind of manifesto you're coming up with then? Is it Blairism Mark II?
Well, you'll have to see when it's announced. I mean, I think these labels are a bit old-fashioned myself. It's 16 years since Mr Blair left office. We've got a new leader for new times. And what I'm pleased about is that the Labour Party is going to be a changed party from the one that was offered to the electorate in 2019. Much more facing the public, rolling our sleeves up and trying to stop the mess that would be created by a fifth term of the Tories.
Mr McFadden, lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you for joining me.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. Lovely to see you on this Sunday morning. Now I'm joined by Susan Hall, who's a member of the London Assembly and, of course, the Tory candidate for Mayor of London. She's the woman trying to take on Sadiq Khan. Let's get started because Gary on my People's panel has asked what you would do about ULEZ if you got elected.
I'd stop the expansion on day one, and I pledged that, and that would happen.
Would you reverse the congestion charge, LTNs?
LTNs are within the control of the local councils, but I would absolutely do everything I could to get them removed.
And obviously the Labour attack line on that, particularly with regard to the ULEZ expansion, is that it was Boris Johnson's, a Tory's idea.
Yes, but that's a ridiculous argument. It was brought in for the centre of London. And talking to people that live in inner London, they are happy with it. But then they've got buses at the end of the roads. They've got tube stations everywhere. Those of us that live in the outskirts of London just do not have the same offer of public transport. And that's the difference. And that's what Sadiq Khan just does not understand.
The other thing that has got motorists tearing their hair out is all of the introduction of the 20-mile-an-hour zones. Finchley Road and surrounds.
Yes.
People getting fined because they've gone at 22. I mean, sometimes at night, by the way. I think we can understand 20-mile-an-hour zones near schools at peak times.
Yes.
But what do you think? I mean, would you rip all those out?
The 20-mile-an-hour zones in places like you've said, the Finchley Road, are ridiculous. And I do wonder if that's a cash grab as well, which, of course, the ULEZ expansion absolutely is.
Why do you say that?
Because £200 million has been put into the budget that they think that they'll get from it from the first year. This is nothing but a tax on the poorest of Londoners.
But Sadiq Khan will insist that this is to try and make the London air cleaner and to save lives.
Yes, but his own impact assessment done by TfL or commissioned by TfL says it will make virtually no difference whatsoever. But it is making a big difference to those families that simply cannot afford to replace their cars. £2,000 scrappage scheme, we both know, Camilla, does not buy you a compliant car. I mean, he just doesn't listen, doesn't understand. It's a tax on poorer Londoners.
Do you also agree, again from Gary, he wants to know from a Tory whether we should scrap the ban on diesels and petrols by 2030? I mean, do you want to see the government be pushing back some of these net zero targets and some of these things that are actually going to impoverish people, the ripping out of boilers and replacing them with heat pump plan? What does that mean?
It's commendable that they've got a date, but I don't think it's going to work.
But you're quite juxtaposed then. You're a Tory, but you're quite juxtaposed to government policy. I mean, do you consider yourself to be on the right of the party?
Do you know, it depends what you're talking about. Sometimes I would be slightly to the right, other times apparently I'm not. I have got my own views. As Mayor of London, you have got to have your own views and reflect what Londoners want. And it doesn't matter if those Londoners are Tory, Labour, Liberal, whatever they are, or those with no particular politics at all. You've got to listen to people.
On that note, I've just got to ask you about this because it's been alleged that you've liked tweets that endorse comments made by Enoch Powell, that also that you've, I think, tweeted in 2020, quotes, "Come on, Donald Trump, make sure you win and wipe the smile off this man's face." That's in response to a video of Sadiq Khan. You've also liked a tweet calling Mr Khan a traitor rat and saying that he's our nipple-height mayor of Londistan.
Yeah.
Are they the right things to be retweeting?
Well, quite frankly, I knock on doors morning, noon and night. That's what I do. I ask people their opinions. I have never, ever had anybody on a doorstep say, "Oh, but I don't like your tweets." People are worried about things like the ULEZ, cost of living, and policing is high on everybody's agenda. That's what I'm hearing on the doorsteps. People don't worry about that. People worry about what's going to affect their lives. And I have to be, with the greatest respect, what I put on Twitter on that doesn't affect people's lives. These big issues do.
All right, let's talk about perhaps a big issue for some people in that part of London, the Notting Hill Carnival. There's been a lot of talk about the arrests that are made, the violence that happens at the carnival. Should it be stopped?
No, I've never said it should be stopped. I do wonder if the organisers ought to look at putting it somewhere else. It's a victim of its own success. People love going to it. It's a wonderful celebration of culture, but it's got so successful, so many people go to it. It's in roads that cannot cope
Should it
with
be
that
moved
number.
then, rather than stopped?
I think the organisers should certainly look at that and see if that's what they could do.
Would you be happy to see Jeremy Corbyn stand against you for Mayor of London? I mean, the polling suggests if he does so, he splits the left-wing vote between him and Sadiq Khan, and you race through the middle.
Well, it's for him to decide what to do. I do know that possibly there will be problems within the Jewish community if he does, because of his anti-Semitism, and we
He
must
suggests
bear
he
that.
isn't an anti-Semite, but you think
fair
he
enough.
is? OK.
No, I just know what the Jewish community might think about that.
Let's talk very quickly as well about American XL bully dogs that have made their way from America to the UK. Quite a lot of attacks in the London area. Obviously, Rishi Sunak's come out with this ban. Would you like to see a cull? Because if there are dogs still in existence for the next 10 years, even if they're banned from coming here and being bred, you've still got these potentially aggressive dogs in danger of attacking humans.
Yeah, aggressive dogs that can be 9 stone are a problem. I'm glad they're going to be banned.
Should they be killed?
At this point, I don't think so. I think they should have muzzles on. Certainly, personally, but it's only a personal thought, I would not want them near my grandchildren. If they're 9 stone, if they weigh 9 stone and they're up against children, clearly there could be a problem.
I know you're a GB viewer and listener, so I wondered whether you caught Patrick Christie's expose of the fact that Labour-run Ealing Council has been housing people in shipping containers. He spoke to a legal immigrant. She had come in from the Congo. She's in the shipping container with her children. It's cockroach infested. It's not fit for habitation. She made the point, why am I here and people who have come here illegally are in hotels?
Well, I would say she's got a point. I mean, the broader issue is the fact that despite that the government given Sadiq Khan £9 billion to build more housing, he has not built enough houses, and that's certainly something I will be looking at when I'm mayor in May.
And a final word on crime. We've now become, according to some of the newspapers, a nation of shoplifters. Are you worried about some of these kind of mob attacks on shops on, for instance,
yes, I am.
Oxford Street? What would you do about it,
Well, I
Susan?
stand up for shop owners everywhere, and it is shoplifting, isn't it? It's a crime.
Has the Met lost control of this?
The Met has. We've got to have more bobbies on the beat. We've got to have more frontline policing in show.
Also, how about this £200 limit? They won't look at you unless you've thieved something for more than
outrageous, Camilla.
What do you think then?
I think that is outrageous. Stealing is stealing. If I was to take your pen, that is stealing.
Yeah.
And I feel very strongly about this. We've got to get law and order back in London, and I will absolutely sort this out when I become mayor.
Susan Hall, lovely to speak to you this morning.
Thank you.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Dementia can have a devastating impact on any family. Hi, Sally. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Thank you very much for having us today.
Pleasure.
Earlier this week, I caught up with Alistair's wife, Sally, at the couple's home in Hampshire to find out how she has been coping with the news. So, Sally, when I spoke to Alistair in the studio on Sunday, he spoke about how he had got early signs and suspicions that there might be something wrong. He talked about missing call times. He talked about, at one point, having trouble with his laces. Did you suspect in the run-up to his diagnosis that something was amiss?
Yes, I did. The first signs at home were him not being able to reset an old-fashioned clock we have in the kitchen. So I would say, the clock stopped, can you set it please? And then he would set it completely different time, random times. And he was forgetting things. He would forget days of the week, what month it was, that sort of thing. And then he would, if he had something on the next day, he would go to bed stressed and get up in the middle of the night.
And how long had that been going on for?
Only about a month before we went to the doctor.
Really? But then presumably this stuck out like a sore thumb, because we associate him professionally with being very much across his brief, being in full command of the facts. Is that what he's like at home?
Not really. He's always been forgetful. So at first, if I mentioned it to the children, they would say, "Well, that's Dad." You know, famously, he put his wallet. Has done it twice actually. Put his wallet on the roof of the car at a petrol station, then driven off.
Right.
Losing the wallet. Put his briefcase down once to hail a taxi in London and left. Got in the taxi and drove off and left the briefcase on the pavement. So that's the sort of thing he has done in the past. So things like that weren't a total surprise. But when it started to be like days of the week, months of the year, seasons as well, he used to get confused what season we were in. That's when it started to ring alarm bells.
And when you went to the doctor and got the diagnosis, how shocked were you? Because you brace yourself, but you never think it's going to happen to you, right?
I wasn't shocked, because I'd already guessed that's what he had. And the doctor, the GP, did a sort of, I think, quite a common test for dementia. And I was there in the room when he did it, and the answers he was giving were, a lot of them were wrong. So I kind of guessed. I'd prepared myself for it. But we didn't get the diagnosis for some time afterwards, because we had to see various other people. And by the time we got the proper diagnosis, I wasn't at all surprised or shocked.
But how did it feel to hear it?
Very sad, very, very sad. But, you just have to get on with it, don't you?
I mean, the thing about what Al has told us in the studio is this sense to which he wants to convey that if you get a dementia diagnosis, it doesn't suddenly mean your world stops and that it's game over. No. Life continues. But how has it changed how he's been behaving, and indeed, what impact has it had on your marriage, would you say?
I don't really think that it's affected him too much yet. I mean, he hasn't driven since November when we first got our suspicions, because he had an accident in the car. Not a big accident, but enough to cause concern. So I made that decision that he shouldn't drive, and he accepted that very easily, which surprised me. And that's an issue, because living here, we're not really isolated, but it does take a while to, you can't walk to a shop, you have to go into a car and drive to a shop. And other things that he would normally have done on his own, I now have to take him or do it instead of him. So that impacts. But we still have quite a busy social life, and we've got wonderful friends who are still involving us in their social lives. And I suppose I have my own social life as well. I'm still, I'm determined to keep going as long as I can with that. But there aren't any surprises, really. What we're having to go through, I had prepared myself for. So I don't know, it hasn't affected our marriage that much yet.
No. I mean, he said that he was worried for you because you're his wife and his lover, and now he's worried that you've become his carer, which I think lots of dementia patients will say about their own partners, that's hard to see them doing stuff for them that they want to do for themselves.
Yes, I mean, he does have issues with dressing sometimes, just simple things that I have to do for him and check for him. But he's also beginning to learn how to adapt and to, how to make things work within his parameters. So, we're doing sort of the best we can, really. And I think he doesn't want to overburden me, so he does try to do things for himself. But I do have a habit of double checking. So I don't go to bed now until he's gone to bed, because I then have to go around checking all the windows, all the doors, that the animals are safe.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So that's a bit of a problem.
I mean, looking forward, because you're kind of facing the unknown with how the disease might manifest itself, what's your biggest worry?
I suppose I really worry about the impact on the children.
Yeah.
And although they're sort of spread over quite a big age gap, I do worry that the implications for them. And our middle son, his girlfriend has somebody very close to her who's got it very badly, and the two younger sons have seen what it can do, and I think that worries them and makes them feel quite frightened for the future. But I think we're a long way away from that yet.
Yeah. Was it a really difficult decision for you both? I would imagine for Alistair, but also for you, when he thought to himself back in the spring, I'm going to have to step back from GB News?
It was a relief. It was a relief, because I knew that something was wrong, and to go I've never been the wife that would sit there and watch every programme from beginning to end. And the same applied when he was doing regular GB News stuff, which he loved doing. He really enjoyed it. But I was just worried that something might go wrong on air, because obviously it's live. So in a way it was a relief when he stopped doing it. I mean, I was sad for him, because he so enjoyed it.
Yeah, and he's so good at it.
But it was a relief in a way that we got that diagnosis, so he had to step back a bit.
I mean, when you look back, he's had quite a difficult few years before he came to GB News. He spoke about this to me in the studio as well. He'd had that stressful period when he left his last job.
Yeah.
Looking back, do you think that might have played some role in the diagnosis?
It was a very stressful time for him and for the whole family. Very, very, very stressful. And I think that could be part of it, yes.
I mean, you had telling me earlier that you had sort of paparazzi at the door. Yeah. The whole family's then co-opted into it. It was a big hoo-ha at the time. Obviously, things substantially calmed down once he moved into the GB role. But perhaps there isn't a coincidence there, but we might not never know.
No.
He says that he's been helped by going out and walking the dogs for extended periods. Yep. He says he's changed quite a few of his habits, stopped smoking, which may have been a relief to you. Also, he doesn't drink very much anymore. Would you recommend those sorts of lifestyle changes to other people going through this?
Definitely. Yes. I mean, I don't drink much, hardly ever, and I've never smoked. So that's always something I struggled with. It was also the cost of cigarettes.
Yes.
I mean, he was spending £500 a month on cigarettes.
Crazy.
Yes. So yes, of course, I would say that was a very good idea. Yes, of course. And he has had a lot of help from Hampshire Health Authority with his giving up smoking. They've been brilliant.
Well, he said as well that he thought that the NHS had been brilliant in handling what has happened. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're the one taking into all of the appointments and all the rest of it, but how's that experience from a practical level been?
They have been amazing. From the day we saw our GP, who we'd never even met before. I mean, it was just, phoning up for an appointment, whoever was first available.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant and set the ball rolling. And I've been surprised up to this point how much help we've had. And that sounds cynical. I don't mean it to be, but you hear such awful stories about the NHS, and we've had experts from respiratory experts, cardiac, stroke, psychiatrists for mental health in the elderly. We've had an occupational therapist. We've had a mental health nurse. Fantastic. And people keep saying to me, who've been through this experience themselves, is that once you're diagnosed, the help stops. And I suppose in a weird way, I'm waiting for that to happen. I don't want it to happen, but I'm waiting for that, no help. You're on your own sort of mentality.
Although I suppose the focus is always on the patient. And I'd be intrigued to ask you, as the carer, I mean, does the carer get enough attention? There are hundreds and thousands of people looking after people, their elderly relatives, their husbands, their wives, their children who have got different diseases and disabilities. Are they a bit forgotten and left behind?
I guess at the moment, I'm not really in a position to say from my own experience, because we haven't got to that point, really. We don't need carers yet, thank goodness. But I can't really answer that from my own experience, only from what I've heard.
And since Alistair came on my show, what's the feedback been like? Have you received? Tell
Amazing.
me.
On the day of the interview, the Sunday, and he came home, and he was exhausted because it took a lot out of him, I think. His phone didn't stop going, pinging all these messages. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I hate using a mobile phone. I don't do social media, but I've had a lot of messages as well. And we've just opened up a lot of letters and cards this morning from people, and flowers. So it's been tremendous.
And does that help? I mean, I suppose the kindness of strangers.
Yes. Well,
a lot of people you know, but also I'd assume some fans of his that just want to.
We haven't had any fan mail because I guess they don't have his address.
Yeah, although I've had lots on my Twitter feed, as has Alistair, and I think on the Instagram page, so many people just fondly remembering his very illustrious career and kind of sort of celebrating the bravery of speaking out, because I think it is still something that people are shy of being candid and open about.
Like, I think people are quite shocked by that he had the nerve to do it, I think. But that's him, he's spent his whole career in the public eye, really, and that's the way he is. That's how he does things.
On one hand, Alice is spinning a positive message that this doesn't need to mean that it's the end. He's still very lucid. Yes, he's got some motor issues, but he's being very positive. But from your perspective, you're alongside him, and I'm wondering how you feel about the future.
I obviously realise it's going to get worse. It was the psychiatrist told us that dementia tends to be like wide steps. So you're at a certain condition for quite a long time, and then there's a decrease, and you stay on that for the next however long period. So I know it's going to be a gradual process, and I know that it is going to get worse. But you just have to, I guess, take each day as it comes, make the most of what's going on at the time, and try and live life as normally as possible, and just see what happens in a few years' time. Who knows? And there are moments where I want to kill him. But that's the way it is.
Also, that's marriage.
Yes.
In a way. And it comes with its different challenges.
I'm sure he wants to kill me most of the time as well.
I'm sure he doesn't.
At least we've got space here to go out and, when it all gets too much. It's a bit like lockdown.
Yes. Is that how you feel you're living at the moment? Sort of.
Well, the strategies that I used during lockdown to survive, we all had our own little ways of doing things, I reuse here, now in this situation.
Give me some example, routine, doing the same things at the same time,
I mean,
staying close to home.
Yes, I had to get up early during lockdown to do the animals, and I still get up early to do the animals, and that gave me a routine, which is important to me. And just to find things to do here, home-based, because I do go out and I do leave them behind, but I'm not for long periods at a time. And I think lockdown sort of taught us how to behave.
Yeah.
For now, really.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you were able to enjoy the weekend, although the rather damp end for many of us is setting us up for what's to come during the new working week. Even into the end of Sunday, some heavy thunderstorms possible across parts of south-east England, torrential downpours, so do just take care if you are travelling there overnight. Elsewhere, the rain will be turning more persistent and heavy as well for western Scotland, parts of northwest England. Underneath all the cloud around for many of us, it will be rather warm, temperatures holding up around 12 to 17 degrees Celsius. So a very mild start to Monday morning, and this band of rain in the west will gradually push its way over towards the east, scooping up some of the thunderstorms as well, clearing them off out into the North Sea. Rain will be most persistent for parts of northeast Scotland, but behind that there will be some brighter intervals developing, still with a scattering of rather sharp showers to watch out for though. Temperatures ranging between 14 and 21 degrees Celsius. As we head into the middle part of the week, another area of low pressure is hot on its heels and wanting to move its way in. So blustery winds developing for a good chunk of Wales, England and Northern Ireland, coastal gales in places. And it will be bringing this band of rain initially across Northern Ireland at dawn on Tuesday, but increasingly spreading its way eastwards. Generally, northwest England, Wales seeing the brunt of the rainfall. Far south and far north, perhaps seeing some drier intervals in places, but still catching some of that rainfall. Further showers as we head throughout Wednesday, Thursday and Friday as well. Bye-bye.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask